You know, this Labour government want to give mayors more power around the country, okay? And they want to scrap some elements of council power to give mayors more autonomy around the country. Now, as I look at that, I think there is the potential for a deficit in democracy here. You know, if they sweep these things through, then the mayor will become more of an executive and more powerful. And I don't think we can afford to do that in a democracy where the consequences of such mayoral power produce such division. And I'm talking about the hate marches which have been going on all year through London and have spilt over all over the country. And the Police and Crime Commissioner hasn't stopped them in London. And the reason the Police and Crime Commissioner hasn't stopped them in London is because that person is Sadiq Khan, okay? And he should do that. They destroy the goodwill and peace of the West End. I've had callers on this show who had hospital appointments from far away. They couldn't take the train in from Sussex because they were scared of the people they would encounter on the train. They were old and vulnerable women, okay? And the other one saying, you know, I wanted a day out in the theatre, okay? I wanted to come to the West End, do a bit of shopping and go and see a play. But there was a hate march going on, so I thought I'd better stay at home. How sad is that? How sad is that? So I think the Police and Crime Commission should be a separate organisation. Okay, maybe it can be political, maybe it can be an electoral cycle in mid-term, right? Or maybe it can be a completely apolitical situation with an ex-policeman or a senior policeman of the current age. And I can think of someone who might stand for it and who might agree with me on this. And let's talk this through with Peter Bleksley. Merry Christmas, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. There's a lot to unpick in what you've said here, because we're talking about local authorities, local councils, however they're made up, whether that be a parish council that might have responsibility for the local swing park and other matters like that, right up to a unitary council such as the one that I live in, which is a large London suburb. So that whole local council thing is a mixture, and there's very little consistency. Then we factor in police and crime commissioners, which were elected in England and Wales back in the early days of the last Tory government, around about 2010, 2011. Then we throw in the fact that we've got metro mayors like Sadiq Khan in London and Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester, who also have the roles as being police and crime commissioners. So the whole landscape is very complicated, but what I'd like to focus on is how do we hold our police accountable, and who should they be accountable to?
When we met the other night when we were out, you said to me that despite the fact that Sadiq Khan sacked Cressida Dick, the last Met Police Chief Officer, actually he may have been stepping out of line because actually that was the job of the then Home Secretary. So there's a situation of one man, two bosses here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that exists for police chiefs the length and breadth of the country. Not only are they ultimately answerable to the Home Secretary, but in the middle ground, they're responsible, or they're supposed to be accountable to, their local police and crime commissioner. And if we rewind some years to when Boris Johnson was the Mayor of London, it was in fact Boris Johnson that got rid of the then Met Commissioner, Sir Ian Blair, because they did not see eye to eye ideologically on many, many different things, despite them both being former Oxford University alumni. They fell out. Johnson had to win that battle to get Blair out of his job, which is exactly what he did. Yeah. Very similar to the way in which Sadiq Khan got Cressida Dick out of her job, and trust me, she needed to go. Yeah. But how do we get effective, workable, efficient accountability of our police services? Because we need it. Policing is failing the length and breadth of the country in many, many regards. And when it fails us, it fails the brave men and women who are trying to do an impossible job on the front line to keep us safe.
Do you agree with me, Peter, that the consequence of this lack of governance, or perhaps this authoritarian governance, has been seen this year in the hate marches? There's little control of it. There's two-tier policing. The people who support basically the government position, those people with the placards saying Hamas are terrorists, which is a law of the land, they're being arrested. They face bail. They face public order charges. They're banned from Westminster intermittently, whereas the hate marchers are saying some really awful, nasty, pernicious, anti-Semitic comments and not really facing charges at all.
I'm a Londoner, and I travel to London on almost a daily basis, either for work or to watch my beloved Queen's Park Rangers at the weekend.
Yeah.
So I have seen countless numbers of these marchers on the trains, on the tubes, on the streets for over a year now. Some of them are what you would expect, the lentil-munching gardenistas who wrap one of those scarves around their neck and in their rampant naivety think that they want to live in some kind of ideological world. Then, of course, you have the spiteful, pernicious, vindictive, wicked people who would want to commit genocide on an entire race, faith of people, namely the Jewish people. And they are there filled with hate. We see it on their placards, we see it on their chants, and we've seen it in other actions that they've carried out. And what deeply, regrettably, has happened virtually since the 7th of October 2023, when these marches began not long after, is that the Metropolitan Police have shamefully appeased these people. There has, of course, been pressure brought upon them to act more robustly, to when they see that wicked sign calling for genocide, to arrest that person rather than taking their photograph and arresting them at some later stage. They didn't seem to do too much of that when the riots were on in the summer, did they? So consequently, when you appease people, when you appease lawbreakers, you simply empower them and they become worse and they commit more serious crimes. And that, sadly, is what we've seen.
Pinned to the top of my X profile at the moment, Peter, is an interview with Mark Burbeck, who is from Our Fight UK, who has taken the personal obligation to be the change that he wanted to see and actually confronts the hate marchers. He's a non-Jewish guy who takes them on. He's facing charges of public order, but he is talking to the police, and he still says that he can make a breakthrough. The police just aren't trained or understand that actually it's not just about keeping the peace, it's about recognising, without being political, who are the real threat out there on the streets. And it's the majority of these people, isn't it?
Yes, and the police are also poorly trained in terms of what evidence they need to gather to fit a particular offence, so that it reaches a threshold whereby that person could be arrested. The police are also gripped by fear that if they make instant interventions there and then, they dive into a crowd, arrest someone, remove them promptly, swiftly, efficiently, and cart them off to be charged, that there will be an escalation in the bad behaviour of the marchers, and that they feel they will be held responsible for making a bad situation even worse. Well, my answer to that is, dear Metropolitan Police senior leadership, grow a spine. Do not allow people to chant genocidal chants. Do not allow people to wave banners and hold placards up that call for the extermination of a particular race, faith of people. Act properly, act consistently. Consistently. That's what people want to see. Because, of course, we have expressions that are so familiar to us now. For example, two-tier policing.
Yeah.
They see one march being policed in one manner, and then they see another march being policed completely differently. And it sows a lot of discontent.